An unfamiliar young man and woman, trapped due to elevator malfunction, spent a full 3 days and 2 nights together. During this time, the darker aspects of human nature were fully revealed in them, to the extent that their first action upon being rescued was desperately deleting the surveillance footage. So what exactly happened during those 3 days? Let's start from 3 days ago. The female lead, Amy, is a white-collar worker who happened to stay late at the office that night due to overtime. It was Friday night, coupled with the upcoming President's Day long weekend, and everyone in the company was in high spirits, looking forward to an extended holiday. Moreover, it was Valentine's Day, and Amy was eagerly preparing to reconcile with her ex-boyfriend by flying to meet him. Amy, oh my God, why isn't the elevator coming? I need to catch my flight. The male lead, Xiaoming, looks like you're stuck here too. Amy, yeah, what should we do? I need to get to the airport as soon as possible. Xiaoming, don't worry, I believe someone will come to fix it soon. However, neither of them could have imagined that this elevator malfunction would be one of the most challenging experiences of their lives. As the elevator slowly descended, only a few floors down, a man carrying bags hurriedly entered. He was a staff member from another floor, looking particularly cheerful for the upcoming 3-day holiday. He engaged in conversation with Amy as they rode the elevator, discussing holiday plans in the festive atmosphere. Male lead, hey, do you work in this building too? Everyone seems excited today. Finally, the long weekend is here. Amy, yeah, everyone is busy planning for the holiday, and I'm about to catch a flight. Do you have any special plans? Male lead, nothing special, just looking forward to resting and hanging out with friends. By the way, have you noticed the graffiti on the elevator wall? It looks interesting. Both turned to look at the graffiti on the elevator wall, depicting a stick figure trapped inside, with a humorous touch. Amy, quite interesting. Looks like even this little guy is in a hurry for the long weekend. Just as they were chatting, the elevator suddenly jolted and stopped at the 4th basement level, neither going up nor down. The man quickly pressed the emergency button, but they received no response from the surveillance despite waving at it. With no cell phone signal in the basement, they gradually realized that this was not a simple malfunction. Male lead, looks like we're stuck for now. How about we sit here and wait? Maybe someone will come to rescue us soon. A man stood at the entrance of the accounting firm, smiling as he introduced himself. Hello, everyone. I'm Phineas. Here, I've opened a small accounting firm. Although I'm young, I'm passionate about my work. The female client manager frowned slightly, feeling that this young accountant seemed somewhat unreliable. She remembered her ex-boyfriend, a wealthy entrepreneur, and couldn't help but feel a hint of disdain for the man before her. As time passed quietly, the night security guards had already left, and the employees of the accounting firm had also gradually departed. The woman realized that now only she and the young accountant were left here. Faced with this sudden predicament, she could only reluctantly accept reality. The two decided to tackle the problem at hand. The man suggested building a human ladder to try to open a ventilation duct for escape. However, they discovered that the vent was tightly locked and couldn't be opened. The woman lost her patience and began to scold loudly. This is terrible. Movies always say you can escape through the ventilation duct, but now it seems like it's all a lie, the woman exclaimed angrily. Don't worry, we need to calm down and find a solution. The man tried to soothe the woman's emotions, then began to think of strategies. They realized that no one would come to work until Tuesday, meaning they could be trapped here for over 80 hours. The woman was feeling exhausted and incredibly thirsty. Upon hearing this, the man quickly took out his drink and handed it to her. After some polite small talk, the woman took a sip of the drink. In return, she pulled out some snacks from her bag. They began chatting cheerfully for a few hours. However, the woman soon realized a problem. Drinking water always leads to needing the restroom. She hesitantly glanced at the elevator. The space was limited. Should she just go here? The gentlemanly man suggested the woman use his coat, but as an educated elite woman, she firmly refused the proposal. In the end, she chose to relieve herself in her own thermos. The man turned his back to her and covered his ears, pretending not to know anything. The woman thought the man's character was decent enough, so they began discussing more personal topics, such as their relationship statuses and family backgrounds. It turned out that both of them were particularly lonely individuals, lacking friends, and even estranged from their families. So, even if they were to disappear for 3 days, no one would come looking for them. The female lead had originally planned to go to her ex-boyfriend's city to give him a surprise, but she missed her flight. It seems like the plan to reconcile has gone down the drain. The male lead quickly opened the bottle of red wine he had brought along, originally intended for a client. He thought life is short, so why not drink it with the female lead first? So the two of them drank sip by sip, enjoying the fine wine, passing the time. With nothing else to do, the male lead even took out his notebook and started drawing. It wasn't until he glanced at the clock that he realized it was already 6 in the morning. After all the fussing around for so long, without even spending the night, they both felt a bit tired. "Why aren't we sleeping?" the female lead asked. "Well, actually, we have a secret," the male lead suddenly said. The female lead looked at him curiously. "What secret?" The male lead explained that this wasn't actually their first time meeting. He had bumped into the female lead several times in the building and had even developed feelings for her long ago. But he had never dared to confess because he thought she was too proud and worried about being seen as a creep. Though the night was long, they decided to talk about wilder topics. So they began discussing the most memorable places they had played poker. The more they talked, the more spirited they became, but suddenly, the male lead stopped. "What's wrong?" the female lead asked curiously. The male lead sighed. "The topic is too wild. It feels like I'm reliving it." Thinking there were still 3 days left, and life being short, they decided to enjoy themselves. So they really did have a blast. But there were surveillance cameras in the elevator. "Are you planning on nobody showing up to work in 3 days?" After the passion, the man confessed his love for the woman, but she said she still wanted to get back with her ex-boyfriend. She said to him, "You're just a passing visitor in my life. We've only known each other for a day, and you want to be with me forever? Are you crazy?" As she finished speaking, the man burst into tears. Since Ami was so honest with her, the male lead said he would be honest too. He told her the truth that he wasn't some young and promising accountant, but a low-level security guard in the building. He had noticed Ami long ago, even taking hundreds of secret photos of her. Security guards could see everyone in the building, but nobody would notice them because they were the invisible people at the bottom of the building. Even the elevator malfunction was arranged by the man. He calculated Ami's time to take the elevator from the surveillance footage, then dressed up carefully and entered the elevator while she was distracted by the graffiti, quietly closing the elevator door, just to have a fling with her. With that said, he took out the key from his pocket, rushed to the elevator, and said, "If you want to leave, leave now." Ami was stunned and cursed. "How dare you say you're not a creep?" Realizing she had done such a thing with the lowest-level security guard, Ami was furious and ashamed. She shouted that she would call the police as soon as she got out and have this creep thrown into jail. The man chuckled and closed the elevator, wrestling with Ami. Unexpectedly, Ami struggled too violently and broke the key. Oops, now nobody could get out. Ami couldn't control her anger, so she grabbed a thermos and smashed it against the man, causing blood and flesh to splatter. They were just so affectionate a moment ago, and now, after just a few minutes, they were fighting for their lives. The male protagonist didn't hold a grudge against Ame for her accident. Instead, he felt proud that he could attract her. Originally, there were 3 security guards scheduled for the weekend rotation, but the male protagonist greeted them all and volunteered to take their shifts, ensuring that no one would come to rescue them before Tuesday. While the male protagonist's actions were indeed despicable, He ultimately found himself trapped in the predicament created by the female protagonist. He claimed that the female protagonist's actions were voluntary and that he didn't force her. He angrily questioned why the female protagonist was so pragmatic, why she immediately changed her attitude upon learning he was a security guard. As he spoke, he struck at the elevator, accidentally opening a hole in the ceiling but finding no nut inside. So he climbed up and continued to strike with a thermos full of urine until he successfully opened a gap. The previously anxious atmosphere was instantly replaced by the joy of escape. The male protagonist sincerely asked the female protagonist to hold the elevator door for him, promising to come back immediately to rescue her once he got out. This time, the female protagonist became clever. She said she couldn't hold it but promised not to call the police or leave him. Then she began painting a beautiful future for them, vacationing by the seaside, never being apart. The male protagonist was moved by her words and exerted all his strength to push the female protagonist out of the elevator. However, instead of escaping directly, the female protagonist turned back and flipped the middle finger at the male protagonist, implying she would call the police to have him jailed. This action drove the male protagonist completely crazy. He turned dark and made a noose out of clothes, hanging it on an outside hook, then struggled to climb out. Just as the female protagonist was halfway up, the male protagonist grabbed her, and they both fell back into the elevator shaft during the struggle. Fortunately, the male protagonist cushioned the fall, and the female protagonist was unharmed, but the male protagonist sustained some injuries. Quickly, the female protagonist thought to trigger the fire alarm by burning clothes with a lighter, hoping to attract the firefighters for rescue. With the man critically injured on the ground, the woman mercilessly broke his nose and then bound him with clothing. She took out a cigar, looking at the man with cold eyes. Fearful, the man, under the woman's threat, picked up his phone and tremblingly confessed to his crimes. Male protagonist: I'm John. I used to be a vice president of a company. The woman listened impassively as she began to remove the man's pants, as if preparing for some kind of surgery. Male protagonist: I don't want to go to jail. Can you understand? The woman sneered, continuing her actions, while the man could only helplessly close his eyes. Male protagonist: it wasn't intentional. It was an accident. Time passed quickly as they anxiously awaited rescue, but only the male protagonist's colleagues and his girlfriend arrived. Colleague: what's going on? What happened? The woman desperately called for help over the radio, but there was only silence in response. Woman: help. Can anyone hear me? The male protagonist watched the woman's despair and quietly untied her ropes, then hurriedly rushed towards the elevator. Male protagonist: come with me, quickly. However, at that moment, his expression suddenly became resolute. He knocked out the woman, luring his colleague into the elevator with him. Male protagonist: sorry, this is the only way out. In the darkness, he coldly looked at his colleague and then started the elevator, crushing his colleague into two pieces. Male protagonist: goodbye, old friend. After fleeing the scene, he stuffed the woman into the trunk, destroyed her phone, and quickly cleaned up the crime scene. Back in his studio, he deleted all surveillance records but accidentally encountered his colleague's girlfriend. Male protagonist: your boyfriend has already left. The girlfriend looked at him puzzled, then left dejectedly. Finally, he threw the girlfriend's body into the elevator shaft. The man who was once sincere has now become a ruthless and cruel psychopath. He drove with the female lead to a narrow alley, where the roadside trash cans were filled with gasoline. It seemed he intended to burn the female lead to death. However, deep down, he couldn't quite bring himself to do it and wanted to hear the female lead's opinion one last time. When he opened the trunk, he was shocked to find the female lead already suffocated. This scene caused immense anguish to the male lead. If he weren't a security guard, perhaps their encounter would have led to a different story. Why? he choked out, tears streaming down his face. However, just as the male lead turned to wipe his tears, the female lead quietly climbed out of the trunk and struck him forcefully, revealing her fierce side. The more the female lead thought about it, the angrier she became, determined to eradicate the problem at its root, or else it would just sprout anew with the spring breeze. She climbed into the car, floored the accelerator, and rammed the male lead into the trash can filled with gasoline. Did you think I would just let myself be slaughtered? The female lead lit a cigar, looking coldly at the male lead struggling in the flames. This woman was incredibly strong, and with that, the story came to a close.